Recording in progress. We are in the final countdown, chapter 11 of Vision for You. And it's kind of a culmination. It describes what happens in early Alcoholics Anonymous, how slow the growth was, what a 12-step call was, before they knew it was a 12-step call. And I was thinking about this because I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, and they have Rosary Hall still here. And Rosary Hall is where Sister Ignatia came to finish out her days on earth, serving God in the alcoholics. Tremendous stories, and if we ever have time, we'll share some of them. But could you imagine if Alcoholics Anonymous was trying to start today and our birthright was going into the hospitals or detoxes or rehabs and visiting drunks? We wouldn't be allowed in because of the laws. And I'm going to tell you what, we used to be able to go into Rosary Hall 24 hours a day. Alcoholics only were the only ones allowed in there. No newspapers, no lawyers, no wives, no nothing. Just drunks and the members of Alcoholics Anonymous at St. John West Shore Hospital in Glen Bay and so on and so forth. And because of the new laws that are in place, that's no longer a possibility. So now what happens is we got to get over all the bad habits they learned before they come into Alcoholics Anonymous, and they want to take resumes and have applications filled out to see who they want to sponsor them. Times have changed, but the spirit of AA remains the same. We are on page 160. I am here with my good friend and cohort, Elizabeth BL. She will say hello in a minute because we're going to read a paragraph and introduce her. So what happened yesterday or last reading here is they talked about the people getting together for these gatherings. They had gone through the detox. They had been taken to these meetings, not called Alcoholics Anonymous yet, and had met the crowd in there. We talked about the electric and buzzing atmosphere. When you go into a meeting, you can just hear it in the air. You can feel the spirit, if you will. And it says the very practical approach to his problems. It's the last paragraph. The absence of intolerance of any kind, the informality, the genuine democracy, the uncanny understanding which these people had was irresistible. He and his wife would leave elated by the thought of what they could now do for some other stricken acquaintances in his family. They knew they had a host of new friends. It seemed that they had known these strangers always. They had seen miracles, and one was to come to them. They had visioned the great reality, capital G, capital R for the listeners, their loving and all-powerful creator. Elizabeth?
Hi, Elizabeth Alcoholic. Welcome, everybody. God, what a beautiful paragraph, talking about everything else that would divide us falls away, and this special thing that we found together connects us. I know for me, that was the thing that kept me here. I didn't really know what this is about, but the minute I never forget my first meeting and sitting there and hearing people talk and feeling like they had read my mind. It was really the first time. I mean, I fit in with the druggies and the drunks and the misfits in the world, but I never felt like I fit in until I heard the language of the heart. And that's what they're talking about and how beautiful that is. And the lifelong friendships that we have with people here is so much stronger. I didn't have an inner life before I got here. And then I get here and I find this language of the heart for the first time. And it's just beautiful. Go ahead, Bill.
You hear him saying in an AA meeting, we run into people we've never met before. We reminisce. It says it seems like they've known these people all their lives because we're really all the same. Now this house will hardly accommodate its weekly visitors, for they number 60 or 80 as a rule. Alcoholics are being attracted from far and near. From surrounding towns, families drive long distances to be present. A community 30 miles away has 15 fellow of Alcoholics Anonymous. Being a large place, we think that someday its fellowship will number many hundreds. And there's an asterisk saying this was written in 1939. We know that has taken place and really, really expanded. But life among Alcoholics Anonymous is more than attending gatherings and visiting hospitals, cleaning up old scrapes, helping to settle family differences, explaining the disinherited son to his irate parents, lending money and securing jobs for each other when justified. These are everyday occurrences. No one is too discredited or has sunk too low to be welcomed cordially if he means business. Social distinctions, petty rivalries, and jealousies, these are laughed out of countenance. Being wrecked in the same vessel, being restored and united under one God, with hearts and minds attuned to the welfare of others, the things which matter so much to some people no longer signify much to them. How could they? And there he goes. They're reiterating what was done in chapter 7, working with others. Obviously qualifying it if we're not giving it, if the alcoholic's not placing his reliance on our service or us, but rather on God, that these are things we do for each other. And why wouldn't we? We've made lifelong friends. If they plan on sticking, we don't even know it. And it's interesting that from chapter 2, when he talks about the shipwreck, and then later on talks about what at first appeared to be a flimsy reed has proved to be the loving and powerful hand of God. And now he's over here again talking about being wrecked in the same vessel. So he brings it all together. That's a good writer, right? Starts at the beginning, takes you on a wild journey, and then brings it back to where it's supposed to end. Elizabeth?
Yeah, I'd like to point out something because we didn't read to employers in this big book study, but I love, it points out something really important here too, though, if he means business, because think about how fragile the society was at that time and how much somebody could take advantage of that whole situation. And over back on page 142 in the to employers chapter, it actually talks about qualifying someone that you work with. And if they mean business, if he says yes, will he take every necessary step, submit to anything to get well, to stop drinking forever? And it says, we believe a man should be, this is on 142, we believe a man should be thoroughly probed on these points. A little later, it says, either you are dealing with a man who can and will get well, or you are not. If not, why waste time with him? And then a little later, if he goes to any extreme to do so, you suggest action, and then we bend over backwards to do whatever we can for that person. But if they're not serious, then they can really hurt us, and that's talked about in other places. But, I just found it interesting at how strong that language is. I didn't see it for a while. I'm not hugely familiar, I'm not a to employers expert for sure. Like a lot of people, but those statements, point to things like tradition 3 and what we're here to do. It's very serious. It's not a social club. We're not just here, to talk about recipes and our pets. We're here to help save each other's lives. But that also makes it so special. That's the thing, right? That's that thing that we have a way out, and how special that is. And, here in a minute, it's going to talk about how this continued to grow. Finally, there's hope. I love that statement that says, shedding hope into the dark life of an alcoholic for the first time, however that's stated. But I love that. My sponsor made all of her sponsees read all of the stories, and you get to really get a sense of that, growth and that history and what they went through to get this together. Anyway, that's it for me. Read some more.
So, and there's so much history. They have archives everywhere nowadays. When they had the roundup here in Cleveland a couple of weeks ago, where Bob D came in from Vegas, there was a guy there from Akron, and he must have had 5 or 6 original first edition big books, not all first printing. He had one first printing. He had a 5th or 6th printing signed by Dr. Bob. Prices were excessive. 20 years ago, my ego might have said, get one. And there's so much information and history, and I've been listening, just what you talked about. I was thinking about that when you talked about tradition 3. Because what they're saying is no matter how low he has sunk, and I don't know if the criminality was the same in the 30s as it is today. I'm sure they were breaking the law back then. But there are so many people. I mean, you guys know, twice on Wednesday, I go to 2 different prisons. And there are guys that have been in prison as long as I've been coming to AA, which is over 4 decades, for a mistake they made at 17 or 18 years old under the influence of self and alcohol. And guess what? They're cordially welcome. They look forward to us coming in. Some of them work a better program in there than some of us do out here. That says a lot for AA. Beginning of the last paragraph on 161. Under only slightly different conditions, the same thing is taking place in many eastern cities. In one of these, there is a well-known hospital for the treatment of alcoholic and drug addiction. 6 years ago, one of our number was a patient there. Many of us has felt for the first time the presence and power of God within its walls. We are greatly indebted to the doctor in attendance there, for he, although it might prejudice his own work, was told of his belief in ours. Every few days, this doctor suggests our approach to one of his patients. Understanding our work, he can do this with an eye selecting those who are willing and able to recover on a spiritual basis. Many of us, former patients, go there to help. Then in this eastern city, there are informal meetings such as we have described to you, where you may now see scores of members. There are the same vast friendships. There is the same helpfulness to one another as you find among our Western friends. There is a good bit of travel between East and West, and we foresee a great increase in this helpful interchange. Could you imagine if Bill and Bob saw what Alcoholics Anonymous was today and what it's branched off to? He was a visionary, and I wonder what the slightly different conditions were. Maybe they didn't meet quite as much in the house. Maybe Bill went back and set something up. I don't know how quick it was before they had stepping stones in the 124 club, but I believe when they're talking about in the East, the doctor, they must be talking about Dr. Silkworth. And isn't that interesting? 6 years ago. So the book came out in 1939. Bill must have been visiting Towns Hospital starting the end of 33, because it doesn't say 4 years ago when he had his experience, or 4.5 years. 6 years ago, our number was a patient there. And we're greatly indebted to the doctor. So they're talking about Silkworth, and he refers us, and he took a big risk, because the medical fraternity, why would they refer someone to some spiritual program where laymen could help where they couldn't? But he was humble enough to realize that he didn't have the power, that we didn't have the power, but that God could and would if he were sought. It's just real interesting the way the whole formation and the people that were set in place. Elizabeth?
I'm not very familiar with what that all means myself, but I think I would guess, and I'd love to yield to a historian in our midst, Rob, or something when we open up the floor. But is this New York versus Akron? Because they did do some slightly different things. You know, they had the Akron pamphlets. I shouldn't even try to speak on it because I'm actually not the one that knows about this, but I do love, reading about how it grows for sure. Do you want me to read some?
It's up to you, but I would say this: if they weren't recording this, I'd tell you stuff that I didn't know to be true, because I could tell a story.
What's that?
Said if they weren't recording this, I'd make some stuff up. It would be very heartfelt. Whether or not it's accurate, I don't know. But there's just a lot of history. And I know that they're talking about the eastern cities, but I'll tell you what, a friend of mine whose grandfather, we went to her mom and dad's 60th wedding anniversary. Her mom told a story that their grandfather sold his business in Chicago and came to Cleveland, Ohio, when they heard about the miracle for alcoholism. I mean, there was nothing. We take it for granted that in our destination is Alcoholics Anonymous as we now know it. There wasn't any of that. They were putting them in silence. We read a thing last week which just was brilliant. Billy talked about to be an alcoholic when they were doing lobotomies. I was familiar with that, or at least heard of that, but I didn't know if there was a woman alcoholic, they would sterilize her so she couldn't reproduce. I mean, this stuff is deep. So this is a bigger gift than we could ever possibly imagine in today's date and time. Go ahead.
Well, I was thinking about how many times they heard about something that was similar that they knew didn't work, you know, like a wife who hears about something. It's like, yeah, he's already done that. Yeah, he's already done that, and now here's something completely different that hopefully, they heard it was working for people. I can imagine that. Um, Someday we hope that every alcoholic who journeys will find a fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous at his destination. To some extent, this is already true. Some of us are salesmen and go about. Little clusters of twos and threes and fives of us have sprung up in other communities through contact with our two larger centers. Those of us who travel drop in as often as we can. This practice enables us to lend a hand at the same time avoiding certain alluring distractions of the road about which any traveling man can inform you. And the asterisk says, written in 1939. In 2001, that's the book I have right now, there are over 100,000 groups. There is AA activity in approximately 150 countries with an estimated membership of over 2 million. Does anyone have more up-to-date details on that stats? Newer book.
22, it says there are about 120,455 groups. AA activity in approximately 180 countries with an estimated membership of over 2 million. What was your measure? What was your estimated membership in 01?
2 million. I'm looking, I
See,
have a
that's
newer book
crazy.
somewhere. No,
Did it say 2 million in 01?
Pardon?
Did it say 2 million in 01?
Yeah,
And not that many alcoholics are dying off as quick as they're coming into Alcoholics Anonymous. So the reality is Alcoholics Anonymous is such a household name that I can come out here and try out for the team when I'm not even interested in making the team. And then all of a sudden I come here and I get chalked off to the membership, and all of a sudden our success rate goes way down if you're looking at it like that. But we have to go back to where in the forward it says of those who came to AA and really tried, 50% got sober once and remained, and then it talks about the other 50. So the caveat or the condition there is really tried.
that's right. And as we know, it's not just going to meetings. It's like going to the gym and looking at the mirror and then going home. Thus we grow, and so can you, though you be but one man with this book in your hand. We believe and hope it contains all you will need to begin. What a powerful statement that is, because that means any one of us can take this book and go help another person anywhere. And I take a lot of women through the book today. When I got to AA, when it was the full swing of the self-help movement, people weren't talking about, they weren't emphasizing go help somebody. This program was founded on that. It just blows my mind how many people aren't sponsoring and aren't taking people through the book and aren't helping newcomers. Like, how are you having a full program? It's sad. And I see that influence continues. I'm in the heart of the Midwest, right? I'm right in the middle. I mean, you're a little north of me, Bill, but it's like the influence of if you have a problem, go to a meeting and talk about it. That's not what they did then. They said, go help somebody, and I really love that I'm seeing that change more often. People are talking about it more. Because it is. I'm working with women that are already helping others. A woman yesterday, 5 days sober, she's already helping other people and seeing the magic in that and seeing how her higher power shows up. That's beautiful. She's having a new experience because she's helping. And if anyone's not helping, like, if you need some newcomer numbers, like, let me know. I get them every single day, right? Anyway, do you want to say anything on that, Bill, or should we keep reading? Keep going. We know what you were thinking. You were saying to yourself, I'm jittery and alone. I couldn't do that. But you can. You forget that you have just now tapped a source of power much greater than yourself. To duplicate with such backing what we have accomplished is only a matter of willingness, patience, and labor. Can you speak on that? Yeah. We know of an AA member who was living in a large community. He had lived there but a few weeks when he found that the place probably contained more alcoholics per square mile than any city in the country. This was only a few days ago at this writing, 1939. The authorities were much concerned. He got in touch with a prominent psychiatrist who had undertaken certain responsibilities for the mental health of the community. The doctor proved to be able and exceedingly anxious to adopt any workable method of handling the situation. So he inquired, "What did our friend have on the ball?" Our friend proceeded to tell him, and with such good effect that the doctor agreed to test among his patients and certain other alcoholics from a clinic which he attends. Arrangements were also made with the chief psychiatrist of a large public hospital to select still others from the stream of misery which flows through that institution. So our fellow worker will soon have friends galore. Some of them may sink and perhaps never get up. But if our experience is a criterion, more than half of those approached will become fellows of Alcoholics Anonymous. When a few men in this city have found themselves and have discovered the joy of helping others to face life again, there will be no stopping until everyone in that town has had his opportunity to recover, if he can and will. There it is again, discovered the joy of helping others. When I find out that every one of us has a unique story that we walked in here with, and then when you find out that that story, your story, no matter how long you've been sober, you have something to offer, and it's amazing the people that get drawn to you when you're out there trying to help. You want to say anything on that, Bill?
I think this is the paragraph. I think the psychiatrist is the one who took the book, he read the book. Is that right, Rob? And took it back to the hospital and either gave it to Sylvia or Marty Mann. And they read the book, and it was a female who was hopeless, read the book, and she got sold on the ideas contained in here, went out really blazed. I think that's what they're talking about there, that psychiatrist. But again, I could be wrong, and I'm able to be wrong on the recording, right?
Yeah, it was in Rockland State, that Dr. Russell Blaisdell. The information's in the chat on who the
Of course
doctor
it
was.
is. I should have known that, Rob. Rob's back to flyers. Yeah, if you guys check the chat when Rob's here in the house, he's got pictures. I did not know that Rob and a couple other people here, I won't put them on blast because they're not here. They were there when the book was being written. As a matter
That's
of fact,
true.
some of them can tell you what Bill and Bob had for breakfast the day before they met. I cannot, on the other hand. Thank you, Rob.
Pancakes.
Thank
Did you
you
say
very much, sir.
pancakes? Oh my gosh, that was great. Oh, I love it. Still, you may say, but I will not have the benefit of contact with you who write this book. We cannot be sure. God will determine that, so you must remember that your real reliance is always upon Him. He will show you how to create the fellowship you crave. And then it has an asterisk again. It says, Alcoholics Anonymous will be glad to hear from you. Address, P.O. Box 459, Grand Central Station, New York, New York, 10163. And then I love this part. It's so beautiful, isn't it? Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask Him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order. God, you could break down each one of those sentences, really. But obviously, you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with Him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. I love that. Our book is meant to be suggestive only, and we know only a little. That tells us, we have a saying in, I think it's tradition 6. I don't know. I'm terrible, right? We cooperate, we don't affiliate. That means that, we can say we only know a little. I mean, there's a place where it says, a whole book could be written about the alcoholic and and there have been many articles. You can read Dr. Harry Tebow. I absolutely love. I go to a study on Thursdays if anyone wants to know. It talks about the personality, the character defects we're watching for, what am I watching for? I didn't know for years. I mean, literally decades. I didn't know a lot of things, so it encourages us to learn more, and we can. And I heard somewhere, and again, we've got this lovely Rob K in the room, that Bob didn't want us to deify the big book, that it's not the only end all and be all. And what I love about that is where it says God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. there's a, how do I say this? I don't want to say it because we are on a recording. It encourages me not to be too rigid. We have guidelines here. We have a lot of literature to rely on about what AA is and what it isn't. But sometimes inspiration might direct you to share something else about yourself that might help somebody that isn't about straight alcoholism. And again, I know this actually isn't just an AA meeting, which I'm actually not used to myself. I'm not used to myself, but if I feel inspired, to share about something else, and it feels like a strong, you get that conscious contact. I like that. See that your relationship with him is right. The answers will come if your own house is in order. And what a great statement too, to people, to a reminder that my house needs to be in order, so that I can get that inspiration that's constantly being reminded. Yeah, that's it. Go ahead, Bill.
Just another visionary thing. He's talking about you'll have a host of friends and all this, and they didn't have a lot of time. Like I said, the growth was very slow. When we talked about it, it was like AA was a year and a half old, and there might have been 11 sober alcoholics on the planet. But importantly, he says we cannot be sure that you say, how can I meet some of you people? Now here it is, 90 years later this year, all the original members, unless they were in that movie, The Green Mile, are dead. They're gone. However, there's a member of my home group whose story is in this book, Cutter Bravado. So when they read that, in other words, there are some books that we get a hold of that are spiritual books that never change, and they can't change from the history. When they came out, they'll never change. This book is not only real time, it's timeless. So we're going to be adding people. And I mean, I don't know how it was explained exactly, but we're about 10 years away from just being way beyond our history than first and second generation alcoholics. They'll all be gone. So what is kept in the archives? It's real important. Some of these people get real crazy about this stuff because in 2,000 years from now, we don't want it said that Bill Wilson was sacrificed for all the alcoholics out there as God's instrument, so he was crucified or electrocuted, whatever the common death sentence is at the time. You don't want the story to change. We want it to remain, what does it say? Pure and simple. Talks about that in the forward to the third edition. Thank you.
Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and fellowship and spirit are both capitalized. And you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. And again, capitals for road, happy, and destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. I love that. I get goosebumps when I read that part. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit. I love emphasizing to newcomers that you are not alone anymore. And I have a group that when we share newcomer numbers, several people reach out and people will tell us, wow, I've never had that much support. I've never had this many people reach out to me. I hope your group is like that too, because it's a beautiful experience to see that kind of feedback, because there's here in my hometown, I've been to groups where the newcomers ignored at the end of the meeting, talk about feeling alone. That's not a healthy meeting at all, I just really love that. And the word abandon, that self-sacrifice over and over and over again. The more I think about me, the more miserable I am. The whole idea is for me to get out of me, stop worrying about self. I don't want to live on page 61, and I did for years. We were joking about it before the meeting. Joking about, being a micromanager. I don't want to be that anymore. It's amazing what happens. I heard somebody say that when you take the actions AA suggests, God will meet you halfway. I've had that experience now, where when I don't have the answers myself, I abandon self. I had to be pushed to points where I really didn't have the answers because I usually have answers about stuff. I don't know if anyone else in the room is like that. I'm really good at coming up with answers, solutions and solving problems. I'm a really good employee. But when I got faced with some situations that I just simply did not have the answers, that's when I started to have a God experience that I had never had before in 30 years of recovery. And I'm really grateful for that today, that I understand what those statements mean. And I love how when we go out and we experience this program in our lives and we do take those actions and then we come back to the book and we read it again and those statements come alive and we know what they mean. And I hope you're having that experience too. Go ahead, Bill. He's quiet. We're at the end now. It's your turn to talk.
Bring it up to the wonderful students that we've had here for the last 14 months. I mean, that pretty well says it all. And I noticed something today in a meeting. And it's there are some people, and I've seen it, that guess what? Sometimes the best they can do for maybe 6 months is not drink and come to meetings. We can never minimize that because there are some people that have done some damage. Not usually the ones who still have internet, electricity, a laptop, and they're living at home with the utilities paid. That might not be the alcoholic that's going to come in here and has a lot of time to wait around. But there are some people, if there wasn't, like Bill Wilson said, one of his writings, that the individual would not recover if there wasn't a group, if there wasn't a place to go. Sometimes that's sufficient. I remember thinking about it, looking back, my sponsor said, you did a lot of damage. I was 3 or 4 months sober and it was above, I was, took a job washing dishes and I was probably underqualified for the job, but I muddled through it. My thinking was so shot that if I had tried to sit down and look at manifestations of self, I would have either missed what I was supposed to be doing or probably not gotten any benefit from it. So we can't minimize it because they talked about the rapid growing fellowship in Alcoholics Anonymous, which gets the people to the message, gets them to the book, gets them to service. You got to start somewhere. They're not mailing out the books anymore. So I just thought I'd throw it in. I saw that this morning. We're all coming in here. Our utilities are paid, internet, nice laptops, and $1,200 phones talking about, oh my God, I'm hopeless. If I don't take the steps by tomorrow, I'll drink myself to death. Maybe. I'm not believing all of them.
Bill, do we want to open up the floor?